Labour has called for Reform UK to be investigated by Parliament's standard watchdog after we revealed last week that the party's latest recruit, Dame Andrea Jenkyns, who joined Reform last week, she accused...
Did we find anyone in the Conservative Party who was sorry to see her go?
No, and in fact, I spoke to the Conservatives and they said, we wish her the best with her new friends. Yeah. But on election night, Andrea Jenkyns told LBC, it was just after she'd lost her seat as an MP, and she said to LBC, well, I've been accused of a bribe, of bribing a Reform candidate, but actually they tried to bribe me with an £80,000 job. So this is what she said on election night.
One of their party donors who tried to bribe me with an 80 grand job. And as you'll also see in the public domain, they tried to do with Lee Anderson, and there's also another Conservative former MP they're trying to as well. So I hate lies. I am a straight-talking Yorkshirewoman, and I hate lies.
So hang on a minute. She's a straight-talking Yorkshirewoman who hates lies, but got made a dame by Boris Johnson.
Yes.
Well, riddle me that, lads. Riddle me that. So it was a Tory. It was a donor to the Reform Party.
Yeah. That
she claimed had offered her an 80 grand job
to join
them and ditch the Tories earlier in the year.
Indeed.
Oh.
And so, she said at the time, well, I didn't do that. I didn't want to do that. But obviously last week she did go and do that. So we played out this audio. We asked her about it on air and she didn't deny it. So this is what she said when we asked her about the fact that, she just joined Reform. But hang on, wasn't she offered a bribe, in her words, to join Reform?
What had happened was it was actually one of the candidates who was standing against me who was, causing a lot of hassle. But let's face it, political parties during an election, they fall out. And I've joined them because, I worked with Richard Tice and Nigel Farage for 6 years during the Brexit days. I was there on his march for Brexit, etc. And, I know that they are the guys who are on the same page as me, hence why I've joined them.
What? She sounded a bit like the person who described herself as a straight-talking Yorkshirewoman. Did the second woman kidnap the straight-talking Yorkshirewoman, or is that the same woman?
All the facts I have available to me at this stage suggest it is the same woman.
But couldn't have been a doppelganger that came in?
I don't think so.
How extraordinary.
But Labour are now asking for Parliament's standard watchdog, a guy called Daniel Greenberg, to investigate this. And what's weird, James, is this isn't the first letter that Ellie Reeves, who's the chair of the Labour Party, has sent to Daniel Greenberg about these so-called bribes from Reform. In fact...
So-called by a straight-talking Yorkshirewoman
Indeed.
Who is now a member of Reform.
In her words, bribes. Yes. So in fact, earlier in the year, Lee Anderson said... confusing. When he was a Conservative MP, said that he had been offered an £80,000 job by Reform before he joined Reform. Now, Reform at the time said that was just lies, it wasn't true, but that's what he said. He then, of course, became a Reform MP. So Labour last week had already written to Daniel Greenberg and said, hang on, you need to look into this. They've said economic enticement should have no place at all in UK politics. And then I went to them and said, well, how about this audio? So then they've sent a second letter to Daniel Greenberg. We don't know yet whether he's going to investigate, but he has these two letters. He's got the audio and they quoted her responding, that second clip that we've heard a couple of times now, in that letter. But, all a bit confusing. They haven't come back to me on this. They did come back to me.
Is it confusing?
I'm confused.
It is very confusing. Let me predict that you haven't had any response at all from Reform?
Not on this. Last week they did come back to me and said we refute any allegations of so-called bribes. Andrea joined the party because she believes in Reform and wants to help save the country. But when I asked them about this letter, and I asked Andrea Jenkyns too about the letter, I didn't get any response.
So they're denying it all. So they are effectively calling the straight-talking Yorkshire woman Andrea Jenkyns a liar.
They are on the bribe thing, yeah. Absolutely, yes.
Well, this gets more and more interesting. And I have in the past, you probably don't know this, I've been fairly critical of Nigel Farage.
I had no idea.
But you can say one thing about the man. When he is held accountable for the behaviour of his MPs or his members or his prominent people, they've called a whole press conference to announce this person, then he does always respond very maturely, very honestly and very fairly, demonstrating at all times a commitment to sort of probity and integrity and the importance of accountability. Because he was asked just last week, of course, about details emerging that suggested one of his own MPs, James Murdoch, had not only kicked 7 bells out of a defenceless young woman and been locked up for it, but also subsequently lied about it.
Are you not concerned that he lied about what he did?
Did he?
He wasn't vetted. He wasn't vetted. James McMurdoch was one of those many candidates who wasn't vetted at all by the party. Look, I didn't know any of this when I took back over as leader.
I'm sorry, I must have misremembered that exercise in accountability, transparency, honesty and commitment to probity. But that's the man, ultimately, who will be charged with deciding whether or not to respond to the story that you've just knitted together for us, Aggie.
Well, fortunately, perhaps, although I'm not suggesting that Nigel Farage wouldn't be able to respond adequately to it, the Parliament standard watchdog, Daniel Greenberg, might actually investigate this, especially because there's two different cases of it, and then that will be taken out of Reform UK's hands.
We shall see. I mean, I haven't checked, but I imagine he's on Question Time this week, is he? Or next week, so no doubt someone will be able to put these to him in person.